My knife was already through the canvas before my head had finished the thought, and that's how I want to start this, with the knife going in, because everything I'm about to tell you turns on the fact that I was certain, bone certain, the certainty you only get to have before you know anything, that I was cutting open a crime against a child. I had the wagon stopped at the gate, and the driver white-faced, and my knife through the lashing, and my whole body sure I was about to find the proof of a thing being done to the Princess Isolde. And I was right that her things were in there, hidden, and wrong about everything else. Wrong in a way that took me 3 days and a great deal of quiet, careful asking to understand. And by the time I understood it, I'd have given my arm to have that knife back in its sheath and the canvas whole. But the knife was already through. So let me start there with the canvas tearing, and tell it the way I came to know it, which is to say not knowing, the way you live everything forward in the dark, sure of the wrong things. My name is Roel. I'm a guard of the gate, House Wexford in the kingdom of Tarneck, a wall-end gate man, not a private wing man, never trusted with the soft inner posts, just a big plain guard who stands at the supply gate and checks the carts that come and go, which is the least glamorous post in the whole service and suited me, because I've a suspicious eye and a slow temper, and the supply gate is where you want both. Carts in, carts out. Grain and timber and wine and laundry and the endless river of goods a palace eats and excretes, and me checking the manifests against the loads, day on day, year on year, looking for the small wrong thing, the short count, the false bottom, the thing on the cart that isn't on the paper. That's the whole of my craft. Finding the thing that doesn't match. I'm good at it. I was good at it the day I tore open that wagon, and being good at it is exactly what caused all the trouble, because a man who finds the thing that doesn't match doesn't always understand the thing he's found, and the gap between finding and understanding is where I nearly did a terrible thing to a girl who deserved the opposite. I'll tell you what 20 years at a supply gate makes of a man, because it bears on all of it. It makes you a kind of instrument. You stop reading the manifests with your head after a while and start reading the loads with your body. The way a wagon sits on its springs, the way a horse leans into a collar, the half-second too long a driver takes to meet your eye. You learn the honest rhythm of the gate so deep that the wrong thing announces itself to you before you could say what's wrong, a wrongness you feel in your teeth. And you learn something harder, something I'm less proud of. You learn to suspect everyone. 20 years of looking for the thief in every cart teaches you to see the thief in every face, until suspicion stops being a tool you pick up and becomes the air you breathe, until you can't look at a stopped wagon without your mind already building the crime it's hiding. That's a useful thing in a gate guard and a poison in a man, and I had it bad, the suspicion. The certainty that under every load was a lie waiting for a sharp eye to find it. And that poison is exactly what put my knife through that canvas so fast, and exactly what built in the space of a breath, a whole false story of a child being robbed, out of nothing but a heavy wagon and a flinching driver. I was so practiced at finding crimes that I found one that wasn't there. The wrongness was real. My story about it was the lie. I should tell you why I was a gate man and not an inner wing man, because it's the same poison, and it shaped how I saw everything. Years back, younger, I'd been considered for the inner posts, the private wing, the soft, trusted corridors near the family. And I hadn't got them, and the reason I hadn't got them was given to me plainly by a captain who meant it kindly, that I was too suspicious for the inside, that the inner wing guard has to live among the great folk and their friends and their guests and treat them with an easy trust, and that a man who sees a thief in every face makes the great folk uneasy, makes them feel watched, which they don't like even when, especially when, they've things worth watching for. So they kept me at the gate, where suspicion is the whole job, where there's no one to make uneasy but carters and tradesmen, where a man can suspect to his heart's content and call it duty. And I'd told myself for 20 years that this suited me, that I preferred the honest cold gate to the soft false inside, that I was too plain and too straight for the politics of the warm rooms. And maybe that was even true. But there's another truth under it that I only got to that night with the ledger in my hands, which is that they were right to keep me out, not because I'd have stolen anything, but because a man who can only see the crime in people is a man half blind, and the half he's blind to is the half that matters most. The good in people, the mercy, the thing a person might be hiding in a refuse wagon that isn't a theft at all. I'd spent 20 years perfecting my eye for the worst in people, and let the eye for the best go dark from disuse. And that's why I looked into that wagon and saw a robbery, because a robbery was the only kind of hidden thing my poisoned eye still knew how to see. I live alone, I'll add, since it's of a piece. A gate man's hours and a suspicious man's temper don't make for much company, and I'd let the years take the people a softer man keeps. No wife, a brother somewhere I don't write to, the gate and my own rooms and the long suspicious watch and not much else. I tell you this not for pity but because it matters to the shape of me. I was a man who'd narrowed his whole life down to the finding of wrong things, at the gate and everywhere else, until there was almost nothing left in me but the suspicion. And it took an 11-year-old secret goodness, found by accident under a load of garbage, to show me how much of myself I'd let go dark. The wagon didn't just turn over my idea of the princess. It turned over my idea of me. Let me tell you about the wagon. It was a supply wagon going out empty by its manifest. That's the first thing that pricked me. A laundry and refuse wagon, the kind that comes in full of clean linen and goes out with the soiled and the spoiled and the palace's daily rubbish. And its manifest said it was going out light, just refuse, nothing of worth, the way those wagons always go out. And it was riding wrong. That's a thing you learn at a gate, the way a loaded thing sits versus an empty thing, the way the wheels bite, the way the horses lean into it. And this refuse wagon, this going out light nothing wagon, was riding heavy, riding like it had weight in it the manifest didn't name. And the driver, when I waved him to stop, did the thing that turns a guard's prick of doubt into a cold certainty. He tried, just slightly, just for a breath, to keep rolling. Pretended he didn't see my hand. A driver who pretends he doesn't see the gate guard's hand is a driver with something in the load, every time, and my body knew it before my mind did. And I was at the wagon's side with my hand on the lashing before he'd fully stopped. I remember the smell of it, the refuse wagon, because the smell is part of why I almost didn't search it properly. They're foul, those wagons, the going out loads, soiled linen and kitchen rot and worse, and the whole instinct is to wave them through fast and not put your hands in them, which is exactly why they're the smuggler's choice, the load too foul to search. I had my sleeve up over my face. I almost did the easy thing. I almost trusted the heavy ride to a wet week and sodden refuse weighing more than dry, which is a real thing and happens, and waved it on. The honest truth is that another guard, a less suspicious one, a one who hadn't let the poison soak in for 20 years, would have waved it through, and the princess's secret would have rolled out the gate that day untouched, and I'd have no story to tell you. It was my worst quality that stopped that wagon. Remember that at the end when you weigh me up. The thing that nearly destroyed her secret and the thing that let me into it were the same thing. A suspicious man's refusal to wave through a load that didn't sit right. My poison and my craft were one substance, and they cut that canvas together. I want to be honest about what I thought was happening, because the wrongness of my certainty is the whole point. I thought, someone is robbing the palace through the refuse wagons. It's an old trick, the oldest. You hide what you're stealing in the load nobody inspects. The rubbish, the soiled linen, the things a guard waves through because who searches the refuse? Things go missing from a great house all the time, small and slow, and a clever thief moves them out in the one load no one checks. So I thought thief and I started cutting, and then as the canvas came open and I saw the first gleam of what was actually under the refuse, the wrapped shapes, the careful padding, the worked silver and the fine cloth and the small precious things hidden under a skin of garbage, my thought changed and got worse and got specific, because I recognized some of it. I'd seen some of these things. Not as a private wing man, but a gate guard sees the inventories, sees the fine goods come in, and I knew, with a lurch, that what was hidden under the refuse in that wagon were the Princess Isolde's own things. Her things. Gifts I'd seen carried in for her, plate from her own rooms. Things that belonged to a girl of 11, the king's youngest daughter, hidden under garbage in a refuse wagon being smuggled out the supply gate, and the driver lying about the load, and my certainty went from thief to something that made my hands go cold on the canvas. Someone is stripping the child's rooms. Someone is robbing the Princess Isolde, slow and clever, through the one gate no one watches, and I've caught them at it. Let me put you inside that moment, because it's the moment the whole story pivots on, and I lived it fast and wrong. The smell first. I'd cut the canvas with my sleeve over my face, and the refuse stink rolled out, and I made myself put my hands into it anyway, into the wet foul top layer, the soiled linen and the kitchen rot, feeling down through it for the heavy thing underneath, my fingers in filth and my face turned away. And then my fingers found not more rot but cloth, clean soft wrapped cloth, deep under the garbage, where no clean thing should be, and the wrongness of that clean under foul. Careful under careless was the thing that made me really start pulling, and the garbage was a skin. That's what I understood as I dug. Only the top was refuse, a hand's depth of it, a disguise, and under the disguise the whole bed of the wagon was packed with wrapped shapes, dozens of them, nested and padded, a hidden cargo with a lid of rubbish laid over it to turn the eye and stop the nose. And I pulled one of the wrapped shapes up out of the filth and peeled the cloth back with my dirty fingers, and it was a silver cup, a child's christening cup, fine work. And I knew it, not the cup itself but the kind of it, the small precious personal plate of the royal nursery. And I stood there at my gate at dusk with refuse to my elbows and a princess's christening cup in my filthy hands, and the driver frozen on his bench not looking at me. And that was the moment. That was the quarter-hour of pride moment, the moment I was most certain and most wrong, holding a child's silver cup dug out of garbage, and thinking I'd caught the worst kind of thief there is, the kind that robs a little girl. You understand why I felt the way I felt, a child being robbed. Her own things, her gifts, the small treasures of an 11-year-old, being carried off under rubbish by some thief in the household, and I, Roel, gate guard, suspicious eye and slow temper, had caught the wagon at the very gate, had felt it ride heavy and seen the driver flinch and put my knife through the canvas and found the proof. I felt, God help me, proud. For about a quarter of an hour I felt like the best guard in Tarneck, the man who'd caught the thief robbing the little princess, and I had the driver seized and the wagon held, and I was already composing in my head the report that would make my name. And I was wrong. I was so completely wrong. And the wrongness was sitting right there in the wagon the whole time in a detail I'd seen and not understood, and it took me until that night to understand it. And understanding, it took the pride out of me like a cork out of a bottle. Here's the detail. I'll give it to you now the way it was sitting there for me to see and not see. The things in the wagon were hidden, but they were hidden asterisk carefully, lovingly almost. Wrapped, each piece in soft cloth, padded against the jolting, packed the way you pack a thing you don't want broken, and a thief doesn't pack like that. A thief throws the loot in and runs. A thief cares about speed, not about whether the silver gets scratched. Whoever had hidden the princess's things in that wagon had taken great care that they not be damaged, had wrapped each piece like it mattered, like it was precious to them. And that is not how stolen things are packed. That is how sent asterisk things are packed, things sent on a journey by someone who loves them. And I saw the careful wrapping and registered it as strange and filed it and didn't understand it, because I was busy being the hero who'd caught the thief. And it's a hard thing to see a clue that unmakes your whole story when the story's already made you proud. The other detail I didn't understand till later, the driver. When I seized him white-faced, he didn't do what a caught thief does. He didn't run, didn't fight, didn't bargain. He did a stranger thing. He begged me not for himself, I realized afterward, not let me go. He begged me not to report it. Please, please don't take it higher. You don't understand, please. And I took that for a thief's pleading and ignored it the way you ignore a caught man's noise. But it wasn't a thief's pleading. It was something else, something I'd hear differently once I knew. A man frightened not for his own neck but for something he was protecting. And the something he was protecting was the same thing I thought I was protecting, which was the Princess Isolde, and we stood at that gate on opposite sides of a thing we were both, it turned out, trying to guard. I held the wagon, I held the driver. And then instead of doing the correct thing, the train thing, the make my name thing, instead of taking it straight up the chain to my captain, theft from the royal apartments, suspect seized, goods recovered. I did a thing I still can't fully explain, except that the careful rapping had lodged in me, and the driver's pleading had lodged in me, and the gate guard's whole craft is the noticing of things that don't match, and too much wasn't matching. So before I reported anything, I did some quiet asking of my own. One night of it. One night of a gate guard going where a gate guard's got no business going, asking careful questions in the dark, following the careful rapping and the strange pleading back toward the truth. And what I found at the end of that one night's asking turned the whole thing inside out. And I have never been so glad I held a report one night before sending it. Because if I'd sent it that afternoon, proud, certain, I'd have destroyed the best secret in the kingdom of Tarneck and the girl at the heart of it. Let me tell you what one night's asking found. The driver's name was Dunmore, and that's where I started because a caught man's name is the first thread and I pulled it. Dunmore. A Carter household service, 20 years of it, an old plain man with a family in the lower town, and not when I asked around quiet that evening, a man anyone had ever known to steal so much as a heel of bread. The opposite. A man known for being almost stupidly honest, the kind who'd chase you down the road to return the coin you'd overpaid him. And an honest man of 20 years good service does not, at 60, become a thief who strips a princess's rooms. It doesn't happen. People don't turn like that, not all at once, not the honest old ones. So either I was wrong about Dunmore, or I was wrong about the theft, and a gate guard learns to trust the pattern over the moment, and the pattern said Dunmore was no thief. So if the honest old Carter was carrying the princess's things out the gate, hidden, careful, and he wasn't stealing them, then someone had given them to him to carry. Someone he'd protect with his pleading, someone whose secret he'd take the blame for rather than expose. And there's a short list of people an honest old household Carter will take a theft charge to protect, and I went down it in my head that night, and the list got shorter and shorter until it had one name on it. And the name was so strange that I sat down on a mounting block in the dark stable yard and just breathed for a while before I could make myself believe it. Let me tell you how I made certain, because I had to be certain. A thing like this you cannot be half sure of. I went to where the wagon's goods had been impounded. I had the right, I was the seizing guard, and I went through them properly this time, slow, not as a hero counting his loot but as a man looking for the truth in the details. And the details told the whole story once I let them. The things were the Princess Isolde's, yes, but not all her things, not a room stripped bare hoard. They were chosen things. Her own things, the things that were hers to give, gifts she'd been given, plate from her personal table, a few small jewels of her own, the private property of a princess. The things a girl of 11 actually has the standing to dispose of, and pointedly not the crown's things, not the entailed plate, not the state jewels, not anything that wasn't strictly, personally hers. Whoever had packed this wagon had been careful, almost scrupulous, to take only what was the princess's own to give away. A thief doesn't make that distinction. A thief takes what's worth most. Only one kind of person makes that distinction, a person with a conscience, drawing a careful line between mine to give and not mine to touch. And folded in among the wrapped things I found the last thread, the one that ended all doubt. A list. In a child's careful hand, the same uphill careful letters I'd later think about for a long time, a list of names. Not noble names. Names from the lower town and the outer villages, names with little notes beside them. The widow Sarin, 4 children, husband died in the spring levy. Old Tomas at the mill, blind now, no people. The Harrow family burned out, winter coming. A list of the kingdom's forgotten poor, the ones the crown's charity never quite reached, each with their grief noted beside their name in an 11-year-old's hand, and beside some of the names, small marks, the kind you make when a thing is done, when help has reached them. A ledger. The Princess Isolde had been keeping a ledger of the people her father's kingdom had failed, and she had been, piece by piece, secretly, wrapping up her own possessions and sending them out the refuse gate with an honest old carter to be sold quietly in other towns and turned into bread and coal and roofs for the people on her list. That's what was in the wagon, not a theft. A girl of 11 stripping her own rooms to feed the people her family forgot, run out the one gate nobody watched, by the one honest man she trusted with it, and caught by me, by my suspicious eye and my slow temper and my pride, caught and seized, and very nearly reported up a chain that would have ended it, and ended her secret, and brought down on an 11-year-old's quiet mercy the full cold weight of a court that does not like to be embarrassed by its own children's consciences. I have to tell you what that did to me, finding the list, because it's the turn of the whole thing. I'd spent the afternoon proud, the man who caught the thief. And I sat in that impound room with an 11-year-old's ledger of the forgotten poor in my hands, and I felt the pride go out of me and something else come in, something I didn't have a word for that night and have only half a word for now, a kind of shame that wasn't quite shame, because I hadn't done wrong yet. I'd only nearly done wrong, but the nearness of it was terrible. I had nearly destroyed this. I had been a quarter-hour from a report that would have exposed her. And the thing I'd nearly destroyed was the single most decent thing I'd encountered in a long gray career of standing at gates. A child doing, in secret, at real cost to herself, with no one to praise her for it because the whole point was that no one knew, the exact thing that the powerful and the praised and the comfortable never quite get around to doing. The Princess Isolde was 11 years old, and she'd looked at her kingdom's forgotten poor and done the only thing an 11-year-old has the power to do, which was to give away her own things, secretly, so as not to be stopped, because she'd have been stopped, you understand, that's why it was secret. A princess can't just hand the crown's wealth to the poor. That's the king's to decide, and the king hadn't decided it. The king's court had decided those people didn't matter enough to reach. So she'd worked with the only wealth that was truly hers, her own small hoard, and she'd done it in the dark, and she'd done it cleverly, scrupulously, drawing her careful line between what was hers to give, and what wasn't, an 11-year-old being more honest in her secret charity than the whole court was in its open governance. And I'd caught her at it. And now I had a choice. And the choice was mine alone, because no one else yet knew what I'd found. The report wasn't written. The chain didn't know. It was just me and an impound room and a child's ledger and the honest old carter in a cell pleading for a secret he'd taken the blame to protect. I could do the correct thing, the trained thing. Unexplained royal property, moving out a gate under a false manifest, an honest report up the chain, and let the great folks sort out what it meant, which they would do in their way coldly, and the princess's secret would be over, and the people on the list would stop getting their bread, and an 11-year-old would learn that her one act of mercy was a thing to be ashamed of, a thing that got an old carter thrown in a cell, and her own conscience hauled into the cold light to be tutted over and stopped. The correct thing would end it all. Or I could do the other thing, the gate guard's quiet thing, the thing that was so far outside my place I could lose my post for it, I could bury it, I could let the wagon go. I stood in that impound room a long time, with the ledger in my hands and the lamp low, and I thought about the 2 roads, and I'll tell you in a moment which one I took, but first I want you to sit in it the way I sat in it, because it wasn't the easy choice the telling makes it sound. A guard who buries what he finds at the gate is a guard who's broken the one thing a gate guard is for. My whole worth, my whole craft, 20 years of it, was finding the thing that doesn't match and reporting it true. That was me. And here was the thing that didn't match. the biggest of my career, and every trained nerve said report it. And the report would destroy a child's secret mercy. And I stood there torn the way you're torn when the thing you are, and the thing that's right have pulled apart in your hands at a gate in the dark. I buried it. I'll say it plainly, the way I've learned to say the true things plainly. I let the wagon go. But not the simple way, not just looking away, because looking away wouldn't have been enough. The wagon was seized. The carter was in a cell. There was already a record of a stopped load. And a thing once started up the chain has its own momentum. And I had to actually unmake what I'd set in motion, which is harder than never starting it. So I did the only thing that would work, which was that I lied. I Roel gate guard, 20 years of finding the thing that doesn't match and reporting it true, wrote a false report. I wrote that I'd stopped a refuse wagon on suspicion of riding heavy, searched it, found the load correct against a corrected manifest, a clerk's error on the weight, nothing more, and released it, and released the driver with it, and noted the matter closed. I made the biggest find of my career disappear into a line about a clerk's error. And I freed Dunmore, and I told him, the only thing I said to him about any of it, I told him to be more careful with the manifests, to declare a plausible weight next time so no honest gate guard's eye would catch it. And he looked at me a long moment understanding that I knew everything and was choosing to know nothing. And he didn't thank me, which was right, because the thing was too big for thanks. And he just nodded and took his wagon and went, and the Princess Isolde's things went with him. Out the gate to the people on the list. I thought that was the end of my part. A gate guard does his quiet thing and goes back to being furniture. That's the shape of these things, I'd have told you. But it wasn't the end because of the ledger. I'd kept the ledger. I couldn't send it out in the wagon. It was the one thing too dangerous to move. A list in the princess's own hand that would damn her utterly if it were ever found. And I couldn't destroy it, because it wasn't mine to destroy. It was hers, her record, her careful account of her mercy. So I had it, and it had to go back to her, and that meant the one thing I'd never reckoned on. I had to reach the Princess Isolde herself, the 11-year-old at the heart of it, and put her own secret back in her hands, and let her know that a gate guard knew. I won't tell you the whole of how I managed it. It took some doing, a gate man getting word to a princess without a soul knowing, and the doing isn't the point. The point is the moment she understood. I got the ledger to her, through a careful chain of one trusted person, with no name on it and only a few words from me, that her wagon had been stopped and was safe, that the matter was closed as a clerk's error, that the one who'd stopped it had seen the list and understood and would carry it to his grave, and that she should declare a weight next time. And word came back to me, eventually, the same careful way, and it was not thanks either, like the carter. She was too clever and too frightened to send open thanks. It was something better. It was a single line in that same uphill careful hand, the hand from the ledger, and it said, "Then there are two of us who know the poor are real." That's all. Then there are two of us who know the poor are real. An 11-year-old who'd thought she was entirely alone in her secret mercy, who'd carried it by herself in the dark because she believed no one else in that whole great house would understand or allow it, learning that there was one other person inside the walls who'd seen what she was doing and chosen to protect it instead of stop it. Two of us. I've kept that line longer than I've kept anything. Then there are two of us. She kept on after that. More carefully, the weights declared, the manifests plausible, the honest carter coached by a gate guard and how not to be caught by gate guards. And I became, without either of us ever speaking of it again, the quiet other end of her secret, the gate that let her mercy out. For 3 years, until she was older and the thing changed shape, I stood my supply gate, and I watched the refuse wagons go out riding a little heavy with their plausible manifests, and I waved them through. I who had built a whole career on never waving through the thing that didn't match. And every wagon I passed was bread and coal and roofs for the names on a list I'd held one night in an impound room. And it was the proudest work I ever did at that gate, and it looked exactly like failing at my job. And that's the joke of it, That's the whole joke of a guard's life. The best thing I ever did at that gate was let the wrong thing through, on purpose, for 3 years, and no one ever knew, and no one was ever meant to. I'm older now. The Princess Isolde is grown and gone on to her life, a woman of consequence, and I hear of her the way you hear of the children you once stood near, at a distance, second hand, and what I hear, what's said of her in the kingdom now that she's grown, is that she's known for her care of the forgotten poor, that it's become the open and celebrated work of her adult life, the thing she's loved for. Open now. Celebrated now. The court that would have stopped an 11-year-old's secret charity falls over itself to praise the grown princess's public one. And I think about that, standing at my gate. I think about how the same mercy that had to be smuggled out in a refuse wagon at 11 is paraded in the open at 30, and how the only thing that changed was that she got big enough that they couldn't stop her. And how, for 3 years in between, the only thing standing between her secret mercy and the cold court that would have killed it was an honest old carter and a gate guard who told one lie. I never told. I'm telling now, old and near the end and far from any harm it could do her, and even now I've changed the small things, the names that need changing, kept the dangerous edges blunt, because the habit of protecting her secret went too deep in me to fully put down even when the secret's safe. She knows the poor are real. She always knew. She knew it at 11, alone in the dark, stripping her own rooms to do something about it, when the whole rest of her world had agreed not to know it. And for 3 years there were two of us who knew. A princess and a gate guard, on opposite ends of a refuse wagon, never speaking, passing bread to the forgotten through the one gate nobody watched. I ripped open that wagon certain I was catching a crime against a child. What I found inside was the child committing the only crime worth committing, being better, in secret, than the whole kingdom was in the open. I nearly reported it. I came a quarter hour from ending it. Instead, I told one lie and held one secret for 3 years, and let the wrong thing through my gate again and again. And it's the one line on the whole long ledger of my service that I'll be glad to answer for, whenever I'm finally asked to answer. Then there are two of us who know the poor are real. There are, I made sure of it. It's the only important thing I ever did, and the record will never show it, and that's exactly as it should be, because the whole point of the good done in the dark is that it stays there, and some lights you guard by keeping them hidden. The way she taught me, the 11-year-old in the careful hand, the night her refuse wagon rode too heavy and an honest gate guard finally found the thing that mattered, and for once in his gray, suspicious life, let it pass.